Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to be tracing the incredible path of a true musical prodigy. We're talking about someone whose childhood skills literally sparked a global revolution in the music industry. Yep, we are talking about Prince. So we're going to explore exactly how his absolute mastery of music on a structural level completely transformed into a trailblazing fight for total artistic and business independence. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Just imagine walking into a recording studio, right? And you realize that a single person wrote the songs, sang the vocals, played the guitar, the bass, the drums, the keyboards, and produced the entire album. I mean, for most musicians, achieving that kind of sound requires a whole band of specialists. But for Prince, that was just a normal Tuesday. So how on earth did one artist master so many different instruments? And maybe more importantly, why did he absolutely insist on doing it all himself?
Section 1. Decoding the musical system. Growing up in Minneapolis, Prince had a jazz pianist father who made sure that instruments were treated just like everyday household tools, rather than these intimidating, untouchable objects.
And you know, that specific environment completely shaped how he heard sound. Think about it. Most of us are passive listeners, right? We experience music emotionally. But Prince was exceptionally rare. From a super young age, he listened analytically. He was actively decoding chord progressions, rhythm structures, and melodic movements right as they were happening in real time.
Because he had this absolutely incredible ear, he developed what's called internal mapping. Essentially, this means he had the ability to translate a sound he heard in his head directly into physical action on an instrument. Just think about how profound that is for a second. Instead of going through that traditional, super frustrating learning curve of figuring out how to play something, his brain just asked, hey, how do I physically reproduce what I already hear? It drastically reduced the gap between his imagination and his actual execution.
And this brilliantly illustrates his whole mindset. In traditional music lessons, instruments are usually put into these rigid boxes, like piano is for theory, drums are for rhythm. But Prince didn't see it that way at all. He saw them as variations of the exact same universal language. For him, switching instruments wasn't about learning something entirely new from scratch. It was really just translating his thoughts into a different dialect.
Section 2. The studio as an instrument. So by the late 1970s, Prince started taking this unique internal decoding system and applying it straight to professional recording environments. The core technology that made his grand vision possible is known as multi-track recording. Now, obviously, plenty of artists in the 70s were recording separate parts to combine later, but Prince, he pushed this standard tool to its absolute extreme. He wasn't just tracking songs, he was literally constructing these massive, immersive musical worlds, and he was doing it completely alone. Let's look at how he actually built these tracks. Because he could play everything, he already imagined how every single part interacted before he even hit record. He'd typically start by laying down the drums, then he'd add the bass line, layer on the keyboards and guitars, and then finally the vocals. And he stacked these layers with just astonishing speed. If a bass line needed a little more energy, well, he didn't have to go explain it to a bass player. He just picked up the bass and played it again himself. But all of this brings up a massive question. Why do it all yourself? I mean, that puts the pressure of every single creative decision, every mistake, and every success squarely on one person's shoulders. Well, the source material reveals two huge motivations here: efficiency and an absolute pursuit of perfection. You see, creative inspiration is incredibly fragile. By working completely alone, Prince could move at the exact speed of his inspiration before that magic feeling faded away. As the source material beautifully puts it, the barrier between imagination and reality had become unusually small. Think about it. When an artist has a highly specific, perfectly formed vision in their head, it can be incredibly frustrating to try and communicate that to a room full of other musicians. Things get lost in translation. But for Prince, total independence was the fastest solution to that problem. He didn't have to compromise. He didn't have to explain. He could just execute his vision perfectly, which made the music so intensely personal. Section 3. The fight for control. Now, as his career really started to skyrocket, that intense desire for creative control inevitably spilled out of the recording studio and right into the corporate boardroom.
So, right at the center of this fight were the master recordings. This is a crucial concept to grasp. At the time, the industry standard was pretty simple. Record labels finance the albums, so the labels own the masters. And for decades, artists just accepted this as the way things were. But Prince challenged it. He realized that if you don't own the original recordings, you don't truly own your art, period. This conflict completely exploded in the 1990s into what became one of the most famous battles in all of music history.
Prince actually went as far as changing his professional name to an unpronounceable symbol. You might remember this. It led the press to call him the artist formerly known as Prince. And while it definitely puzzled a lot of observers at the time, it was actually a deadly serious protest. He was publicly stating, for the whole world to see, that he absolutely refused to be treated as just a product owned by a corporation.
He was fighting for some very specific freedoms here. He wanted to decide exactly when his music was released, how often he could release it, who actually controlled the assets, and how his work generated value. This wasn't just some standard contract negotiation where he was haggling for a bigger cash advance. No, this was about the fundamental moral right of a creator to govern their own creativity, completely free from corporate gatekeepers slowing them down.
Section 4. The Independent Artist Blueprint. Let's zoom out for a second and look at the industry today. You'll see that Prince's highly publicized battles in the 90s actively laid the groundwork for the modern music landscape we know now.
Today's playbook is basically built on what he fought for: creative independence, direct artist control, alternative release strategies, and much greater ownership rights. I mean, in today's streaming era, independent musicians just expect to own their masters and release music whenever they feel like it. It's wild to think that conversations that are totally standard today were seen as incredibly rebellious, even crazy, when Prince was championing them decades ago.
And you know what? His technological vision has completely come true as well. Today's one-person studio consists of a single artist acting as the songwriter, the producer, the performer, the engineer, and the business owner. And they're often doing all of this just using a laptop in their bedroom. These independent musicians are fulfilling the exact multidisciplinary, autonomous vision that Prince pioneered back when he was literally running between instruments in those massive recording studios.
Ultimately, for Prince, musicianship was never really just about the skill itself. It was always about freedom. Mastering all those different instruments, that was just the necessary first step. He learned the tools inside and out so he wouldn't ever have to rely on anyone else. And in doing so, he completely paved the way for total artistic and business independence.
So I want to leave you with this lingering, kind of provocative question. If artists are the ones creating the music, how much control should they really have to surrender in exchange for commercial success? Prince forced the entire world to confront this exact issue. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it's given you a whole new perspective on what it truly means to be an independent artist. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.
As always, subscribe to our channel, like the video, and comment below. There are also some links in our description that you may find useful. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.